Hello and welcome to another Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Twitch. So good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community, and without you, we couldn't make the show each week. So thank you as always. And a huge thanks again to Pitter Self-Drive for sponsoring this episode. They're offering TSP listeners 10% off rentals with the code TOTALSAINTS. That's all one word. You can use that code when you're booking online, or you can quote the code when you book over the phone. Now, they offer cars, vans, trucks, and minibus hire at very reasonable prices. They're flexible on short-term or long-term rental needs. They operate a 24-hour drop-off service, so there's no need to stress about dropping off the vehicle in working hours. And if you need a van for a tip run or maybe to move some furniture, they now offer hourly van rental as well. Victor Self-Drive is based in West End, making them the best solution for Southampton van hire at affordable prices. Now, you can find out more or get in touch. Head to the website, which is pitterselfdrive.co.uk, or give the team a call on 02380 474 443. Coming up this week on the podcast, an incredible second half saw Saints storm back to win an 8-goal thriller against Huddersfield on Saturday. Plenty of talking points for the panel. Earlier in the week, Saints put their place in the FA Cup 5th round with a win over Watford at St Mary's. Going to look back at that one. And of course, the games keep on coming. It's a trip to Bristol City on Tuesday evening, so we're going to preview that game for you. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this evening are Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen Cour is the writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 263 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start with the weekly shout out to our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support our show. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And aside from supporting the podcast, each of the tiers has different perks like access to the ad-free version of the pod. There's exclusive TSP t-shirts and merch bundles. There's the FPL and access to the TSP events that we organise too. Now, the ad-free version of the podcast is available on Spotify now. So if you link your Spotify and your Patreon accounts, you can listen to the ad-free pod directly on the Spotify app. And last week, you might recall, we launched the new look TSP shop. There are hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, loads more to start and much more to come over the coming weeks. Patreons get a discount too. The code should be now in your Patreon DMs, so have a look out for that. And do check out the shop. It's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And of course, if you want to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more details. All those links are in the podcast show notes, and you'll find them in the YouTube description as well. Let's talk about some football, shall we? Joe Rothwell's spectacular double helped Southampton recover from 2-0 down to beat Huddersfield 5-3 in that contest at St Mary's. James on X says, good luck to @TotalSaintsPod unpacking that utter madness. I don't really know where to start. I mean, this is going to be quite some blog this week from you, Glen, I'd imagine. One of the longer ones. What was your take on yesterday as the heart recovered after that?
It's the sort of game that brings out every sort of reaction. Over the course of the 103 minutes or whatever it was. I think we're probably going to touch on it later. We had some sort of negative reactions at halftime, which wasn't the best. And, you know, at the end of the game, obviously, we've scored 5 goals in the second half. And there's a few people, you know, we won, everything's great. Luckily, the manager isn't one to go for either one of those extremes. So he's I liked his quote where he straight away said, well, I'm not necessarily a fan of 5-3 games, so there will be some things for him to work on. You know, he said in the tactical evening that we went to, and he said at various times that he wants to win games by controlling games and restricting the opposition, and we certainly didn't do that, especially in the first half. It was kind of open and kind of mad, and you don't get games with that many goals without there being a certain amount of dysfunction in one or both of the teams. So, I mean, first half, Huddersfield were very good. They pressed us, they pressed our defence, and most importantly, they pressed our midfield. So what that meant was that we couldn't do our usual sort of pass up through through the thirds and get it to the front players. So we were tending to only sort of like knock a couple of passes and then try the chip ball into the forwards, and that wasn't sticking. So we were struggling. And then the substitution when Flynn Downs had to go off. So we had a midfield that was under pressure, and bringing Joe Rothwell on at the time, it kind of meant the midfield was under even more pressure, because Smallbo back in that defensive midfield position doesn't really work when the midfield's under pressure. So within 5 minutes of that, obviously we were 2 goals down, and things weren't looking very very good at that particular time. But important substitution at half time with Brooks coming on for Adams, who'd had probably the worst game I've ever seen him have in his life. He was awful. So Brooks coming on, and he showed sort of like absolute quality right from the moment he came on. And then we had the two ridiculous goals. The first one in particular from Rothwell is just ridiculous, and the second goal was a wonderful pass from Brooks. Obviously, at 2-2, we had them on the ropes. Adam Armstrong got put clean through. Bad miss, and then from that moment on, Huddersfield kind of got a foothold again. Got their goal, which was a bit of a, which was a fluke. I think it was heading for the corner flag until it hit Smallbone and looped up over the keeper. Of course, then we got the own goal, and then our bench took over. When we brought the bench on, bringing on players of the quality that we brought on, it was a cheat code really, and Huddersfield just kind of died at that point. They didn't have anything comparable to bring on, and they didn't have the energy to go back, and cause us more problems at 3-3, and then we took over, and the subs won us the game. So it was slightly mad. There were things to work on. There was some brilliant stuff in the second half from a number of players, and I think it shows it stands us in very good stead in the way that we'll be able to manage this, hopefully be able to manage this fixture pile up with the players we've got ready to come in and do a job, should they need to. I imagine there's not a squad in the league, maybe Leicester, who have got as strong a squad as we've got. So as long as I think Russell Martin will be looking at making sure he gets the balance right in that midfield. With Flynn Downs being probably injured for the Bristol City game, be interesting to see what he does there. But as long as we keep rolling along, picking up 3 points, it usually takes a defeat to act as a wake-up call, and I think we'll have got a bit of a wake-up call from winning, because if you have too many chaotic matches like that, sooner or later you're going to lose one. But the bottom line is we got 3 points. It was a mad, entertaining game for everybody, and there's things to work on. So all good.
A wonderful summary. Steve, Huddersfield they'd won just one of their previous 12 away games, but they were good value for their lead at half time. And I couldn't quite work out whether they just came with no fear and played with no fear, or whether it was our downfall and we created our own mess.
Probably a bit of both, but I think certainly they came with a sense of freedom. And you heard from from their caretaker manager in the post-match interviews, where he basically said, "Look, I could have come here and set us up defensively and just taken a 2-0 defeat, but what's the point? That's not really helping anybody, certainly from a Huddersfield persuasion." So they came and they had a go. They clearly targeted a few areas that they thought that we were susceptible. Namely, they basically ran through the channels. Had a lot of success, especially once Downs wasn't there to offer a little bit of protection. They look like a team that shouldn't really be where they are in the league table. But you can never really judge these sort of things on one-off performances, because I think in the game up at their place, while they were probably just about value for the draw, they didn't look very good. It was more that we just basically just didn't turn up, and we tried to stroll through that game up there before Christmas. And yeah, they looked energetic. But as has been the case with so many games at St Mary's this season, we've got the strength in depth that comes off the bench, and the way the style that we play, the way that we move teams from side to side, creating little pockets of space all over the pitch. Eventually, the tiredness tells, and it's late in games, and we're scoring loads of goals in the last 15 minutes of games. And I think I worked it out just before we came on air. 19 players have scored as substitute for us this season in all competitions, which is absolutely ridiculous. Hell of a lot of those have been, certainly in the last couple of months at home, have been adding gloss to results to make games like 3-4, 5-0. But for once for this one yesterday, they've all come off the bench and basically got us the result. Because I think with the side that started, I don't think we'd have been able to dig that out yesterday.
Yeah, interesting, actually. I mean, Alfie, the other statistic that was doing the rounds yesterday, we hadn't conceded more than one goal in a fixture since October, which was about 109 days, I think. So there will be a bit of an inquest into that. Whilst, it was great that we won, but we did concede some pretty soft goals at home. So there's work to be done there before Tuesday night.
Yeah, it was probably the first bad afternoon, you say, for the back four and the guys in front of them as well for quite a long time. The third goal was obviously a complete fluke, but the sort of the continual pounding in the first half was completely deserved in Huddersfield. And I think Steve sort of mentioned what the caretaker said. They came with a clear plan. They actually changed shape from the 4-0 win they had on the weekend before, just to reduce the distances between the players and just sort of keep that pressure on the ball player. And that relies on Southampton not sort of pinging it around them. They didn't do that for the first half. When they started doing that, they controlled the game and dominated them from 75 minutes onwards. But I saw a lot of people sort of criticising Ryan Manning. There was a couple they didn't get out too quick enough. Will Smallbone, I really like Will Smallbone in the 8. I remember I said at the start of the season that I was part of the Will Smallbone fan club. And I still retain that. But when he plays in the 6 in front of a defence without Flynn Downs, I just don't think he offers enough protection. He doesn't. He's not strong enough in a tackle. People seem to go through him. He misses chances to bring players down. And I think we're probably going to see on Tuesday at Ashton Gate the same midfield of if Stewie Armstrong is fit. And just on the injuries, by the way, I think Russell Martin said that Flynn Downs needs to be assessed, but it doesn't look brilliant for him. Che Adams was a tactical substitution. He's fine. He has a bit of a knock, but that wasn't the reason he came off. And he said that Stuart Armstrong should be fine as well. He just took a hit. So I think we'll see Stewie Armstrong, Joe Rothwell, and Will Smallbone in a midfield 3 again. And creative-wise, they'll create chances, they'll score goals, but I think they lack a little bit of protection. So, yeah, obviously, Howard Bellis and Bennett were disappointed, but I think it was about what was in front of them as well.
You're shaking your head, Glenn.
Well, yeah, I think Shay Charles should play without a shadow of a doubt, especially in an away game. But yeah, I mean, if Stuart Armstrong is fit, I agree that is probably, I agree with Alfie. That's probably what he'll do. But for me, if Downs is not fit, Shay Charles will be the first name on the list. But I don't know. Maybe he seems to be out of favour a little bit at the moment. I know there was one particular game where he wasn't great. I think it was Coventry that he played. Wasn't great, and ever since then he seems to have fallen down the pecking order a little bit. And yeah, if we go with that midfield in an away game, I mean Bristol City when they played us at St Mary's, they basically sat 10 behind the ball.
Yeah,
and they played on the break, and they were quite successful, but the strikers missed chances. So be interesting to see how aggressive they are in midfield. But if they're aggressive against that midfield 3, if that's what we put out, then we could be in for a tough evening.
Did anyone hear the fans booing the team off at half time, by the way? Was that down your end, Steve? You heard it as well. I wasn't sure whether it was the team or whether it was for the ref, or was it maybe a bit of both? Did you hear any of that, Steve, at your end?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would. So, I mean, certainly what I've seen on Twitter in terms of reaction to that, it seems as if everybody who was there, their kind of reaction was that it was probably for the team, but it just feels so completely out of context that
it's ridiculous, isn't it? Let's put it
obviously, I mean, last season, I don't think there were many occasions where you could sort of genuinely put up any sort of defence of the team when they've been booed off for a lot of those performances. They were pathetic on sort of so many occasions, and you just think, well, okay, people are letting off steam. We knew how the season was going to end from a relatively early point in that one, but this season where surely those players have earned enough trust.
Yeah, you've seen nothing but fight over 24 games, have you?
Yeah,
So.
over the last 4 months or so, to have gone on this little run, and basically we've had one bad 45 minutes, and it was bad. We were rubbish in that first half, but I mean, come on, let's get a bit of perspective here. It was rubbish, but what do we know was likely to happen at this point? They're going to go into that dressing room. Russell Martin is going to get into them, and we'll make some tweaks, and those players will go back out there and they'll pick the performance up, and that's exactly what happened.
It is quite nice seeing a reliable sort of half-time motivator, though, because we didn't really see that last couple of seasons. There wasn't ever really a reaction or a response, whereas every time it's been a poor first half this year, I think we have genuinely seen a clear reaction, a clear uplift in intensity and aggression.
Even when that ball looped over Bazunu's head to restore their lead, I wasn't worried because
I was worried.
knew
I felt that there would be the energy might be sat there, but I was totally wrong. So.
No, I just thought it's fine. They've scored 3. We'll have to score 4. It's all right. That's kind of how it went. And I know we've spoken about the bench, Glenn, but I mean, what a week for Sekou Mara. That was 3 goals in 4 days for him. That's that first half, and we'll get onto the Watford game. That first half at Watford, I'd have probably taken him off at half time on Tuesday night because I thought he was pretty terrible. But since then, he's having a great week.
Yeah, and it's about time. It is about time. He's had a number of chances and he's not done it. And the last 2 or 3 times he's been on the pitch, however long he's been on for, he's made a difference. And he made a great difference against Huddersfield. Scored 1 goal, set up another goal. It's a decent finish for his goal. But personally, I was a bigger fan of the setup play for Edozie on the 5th goal, battling away with that player on the ground, and then just calmly rolling it back for his teammate to smash it in the net. That's brilliant centre forward play, and that's what you want him to do. Said on several occasions, he's not like this little slight thing that you breathe on him and he falls over. He's quite a big lad. He looks like he's about 6 foot taller, but he plays like he isn't. And in that instance, it was nice to see him sort of like using his strength to hold the defender off and lay that back. And so maybe I'm going to have to revise my long held opinion that is that I was always asking, is there a player in there? I just don't see it. But against Huddersfield, he showed what he could do. It's a completely different challenge to do it from the start of a game, obviously. Coming on as part of a very strong bench against a very tired team. It's a favourable set of circumstances, but he's he can only play the cards he's dealt, and that's what he was given, and he did something with it, like he did in the second half against Watford. So fair play to the guy, and. Hopefully he keeps going and turns into a more all-rounded player who we can one day trust to start games and not disappear.
We shouldn't forget that the new Charlton manager said that he was the best finisher at the club about 12 months ago, maybe a bit longer. So he's also got something about him in training.
That new Charlton record with his 0% win record
already. I knew that was going to creep in tonight.
Somewhere. But he wanted to take that game on, even though he's been there a couple of days, because statistically, that's the kind of guy he is.
Before we move on, Steve, just a word on Rothwell and Brooks. I feel like we just need to just pay a bit more lip service to them and how good they were. Rothwell didn't get off to the best of starts, but yesterday kind of more than made up for that, I felt.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, Rothwell's initial appearances have been ropey, to say the least.
But we have seen that before as well, though, haven't we? We've seen that with other players.
I mean, certainly there. It seems to be a bit of a theme of ours that players take a few games at least to get up to speed. I mean, we saw it with obviously Ryan Fraser was fine when he was coming off the bench, but every time he got given a start, he was kind of wasting it a little bit initially. But he's obviously grown into that and is now kind of one of the sort of obvious names on the team sheet. Although I wonder whether that might start to change a little bit with obviously David Brooks now seemingly up to speed. Came on at half time and, as Glenn mentioned earlier, was excellent. He looks like another one of these players that is clearly far too good for this division. And we've got to kind of fit all these players into the team somehow. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice problem to have. And with all these games coming thick and fast, I mean, the fact that we got 2 midweek games this week is absolutely ludicrous. And there's almost certainly going to be some rotation. You would imagine. I don't see any possible way we play the same. I mean, obviously we're not going to play the same 11 Tuesday as we did yesterday because of at least one enforced injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to play the same team Tuesday and Friday. So yeah, players are going to have to slot in, and it's going to have to appear kind of almost seamless. I mean, they've looked all right in the last sort of 6 weeks or so when we've had extra games. So shouldn't be too concerned. But that West Brom game on Friday is a big one. I think Bristol City are a bit hot and cold. By the sound of it, they were pretty good on. By the sound of it, they were very good yesterday at Middlesbrough. But I watched them against Leeds the week before, and they were completely toothless. So again, yeah, toss a coin to see which Bristol City side shows up at Ashton Gate on Tuesday. But West Brom at their place is going to be tough. They were. I mean, probably until the first hour yesterday, they were probably the best team that we've faced at St Mary's this season, I would say. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the slightly more fringe players need few of them to step up in starting games.
Well, before we get on to preview the next league game, there was, of course, the cup replay in the week. 2 goals from Sekou Mara helped us through to the next round, beating Watford, setting up that tie against Liverpool at Anfield. 7 changes. It felt to me, Alfie, a bit like that was a chance to put right some of the wrongs from the original tie. Kind of stuck with some of the players. Obviously, 2 of them had gone. But the first half certainly didn't really go to plan, did it?
No, yeah, the first half was extremely dull. I think you do see the merits of making these changes. And I think we had the same reaction on the Daily Echo as the first Watford game, where it's like, oh, this is too many changes. We're going to go out the cup, and it's a bit of a mess. And you do get that dysfunction, as sort of Glen alluded to, using that word earlier, when you make that many changes. But you see the merits of it when you've got players who are ready to come into league games, fully fit, they're firing, they're confident, they've scored goals already. And you get what you asked for. But I think the main takeaway from me from Tuesday night was that it was just another great night for the academy. Because Jayden Magoma, I said on the last pod, and it's nothing new, but he looks like a senior player every time he plays. Really, I wouldn't actually be too. If Ryan Manning took a knock or something, I don't think Jayden Magoma should be out of the question, really. But obviously Tyler Diblin's drive as well. I think you just see more and more of what Tyler Diblin can offer each time he plays as well. And I think he was maybe one of those ones you alluded to in your question, where you said that. Is it a bit of a message from Russell saying, right, well, you were a bit shit in the first game, so here's another chance. Not to say that Tyler was shit, he's a young lad, but it's another chance for him to make an impression that he didn't do at Vicarage Road, and he absolutely took it. And I think there were quite a few of those players did that as well. So, yeah, happy days, 3-0 win. We all get to go to Anfield, and Steve didn't think it would sell any tickets, but it turns out they are selling quite a few. People have already forgotten what happened the last few times we've been there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Looking at the online sales, I think we're well past 4,000, which is absolutely insane.
Are you going, Steve? Have you got your ticket?
I'm not. I'm quite happy to leave my footballing memories with Shane Long at Anfield.
That's funny because my brother said exactly the same thing. I mean, Steve, that was a terrible first half, wasn't it? With Adams hitting the keeper from about 6 yards out, and you're just thinking at half time. I was thinking anything but extra time, please. I don't really mind which way this goes, but again. Obviously, words were said at half time and a much better second half.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. We were competent, but it was quite a sluggish pace. And I said to a mate who I stood with at half time, I said, if we pick the pace up by half a yard, we'll storm through these, because Watford offered nothing. They had that one little counter attack where the guys hit it and got a lucky deflection and it's come off the top of the bar. But other than that, they weren't particularly interested. And yeah, as it turns out, we picked the pace up at the start of the second half and we tore them to pieces. And it wouldn't have been, I don't think it would have been that much of an injustice if we got 5 or 6 again in that second half, like we did yesterday. Obviously hit the woodwork twice with, I mean, let's be honest, those were 2 terrible finishes to hit the post. They both should have been in the corner comfortably.
That was a dozy, wasn't it? Was it
Dozy? It was a dozy and Sam Ammo as well, with the late one. Both awful finishes, but fortunately the game is already won there, so ultimately it didn't really matter. But you would think, like, the standards that these guys have set, they'll be annoyed that they missed both of those chances.
I was glad for Sanamo, to be fair, because that would have been an amazing.
Well, yeah, he's obviously not scored a senior goal yet,
Yeah.
so that would have been a huge moment for him. But yeah, I mean, performance-wise, that second half, yeah, excellent. Picked the pace up, did what we needed to do, and got the job done. It was kind of just frustrating that we didn't show really much of that with the same set of players in the game at Vicarage Road, because we could have all been spared the freezing cold and driving rain of Tuesday night at St Mary's.
Yeah, but maybe that just set the appetite a little bit for yesterday. I don't know. Maybe like the players coming off the bench, and you've got, Mara was obviously desperate to get that hat trick, and he was hungry for it, and rounded off a really good week for him. So I know, like last week, Glen, we were talking about Diblin, and maybe we were expecting a little bit more, but his run for Mara's, I think it was second. That was the highlight of the game for me. It felt like the second half he kind of pushed on a bit, and there was a bit of a sparkle there.
I thought he was exceptional. Pretty much from the first whistle. In the first half, he was one of the few who was. Mara was poor in the first half. He was out on the left. You had Che Adams out front, who, as you said, managed to hit the keeper from 6 inches or whatever. And then and Diblin was the only forward who looked like he was going to make something happen. He's got this very deceptive running style, and you don't want to saddle him with the comparison, but it's unavoidable. The fact he runs like a young Matt Letitia did, in that there's no pace to it, or doesn't seem to be any pace to it, but he gets past people, and
he's strong, isn't he? Big lad.
Yeah, he seems to be, and he's got this thing which he's obviously learned. He gets half a yard past a player, and then he cuts across them. So they're fouling him, or more often than not these days, they're just letting him go. And he just doesn't need very much space or pace to beat people. It's a really interesting sort of like way of beating people that he's got. And I thought he was good in the first half, and it was nice to see him, contribute so heavily to that second goal. And I was glad he saw it as well, because he got absolutely poleaxed by that big donkey centre half they've got, the one that's not Wesley Hoyt. Horrible player. He got absolutely poleaxed by him as he got the ball away, and then the ball went to Mara, and what on earth Mara thought he was doing shooting from there, but what a strike that was, and their goalkeeper was. He didn't fancy defending his near post, did he? That was twice he got beat there. So
and then he went off. He came off. He went off.
Then he went off. He couldn't be bothered anymore. He just didn't fancy it. I've let it.
I'm done. But it was a concussion sub as well, because Watford made 6 subs.
Yeah.
Very weird that.
Yeah, it was. I didn't seem to hit his head on the post or anything like that. He just looked like he couldn't be bothered. And because I didn't know what was going on, because we sat there and why hadn't the game restarted? And get off!
It wasn't until they announced it was the 6th sub of the night for Watford. You go, right, okay, that must have been a concussion sub then.
Yeah, but I didn't see anyone doing a concussion check on the goalkeeper or anything like that. I mean, it's the sort of thing you've got to watch, isn't it? Because it's obviously not that it made any difference in the end, but it's obviously in their benefit, or to their benefit, to be able to bring on a 6th sub. So if one of them comes off and just say it was concussion, I'd be interested to know whether he played on. I didn't look. Did he play on the weekend?
He's a backup anyway.
Backman's not their first choice now. Ben Hamer, the guy who came on's first choice.
Fair enough.
Because they made changes as well.
Tyler Diblin's celebration was that Jack Stevens had a big arm around him, and I think he was saying something to him after that as well, which I thought was nice. Obviously, from
they were keen for him to get the plaudits, weren't they? I think Bednarek as well was kind of like pointing and saying. So, would you trust those players with the next round then, Alfie, or do you think it's more about the games between now and then? There's as Russell Martin.
Well, I mean,
there's a lot of football to be played before we go.
I don't think he's thought about the team. I haven't thought about the team at all. But I mean, I don't think I would put Tyler Dibling in at Anfield against Liverpool personally. Just not because I don't think, I just think it's an unnecessary risk, unnecessary pressure, I suppose, unnecessary potential hammering to give a young lad. I mean, he'll be on the bench. Him, Magoma may well start there. Those guys will be involved. They'll be in the squad and they have a chance to come on. But I'd probably start with a senior team that has experienced that before and see where you end up.
Do you agree, Steve? Same for you? I can't. Maybe the goalkeeper, perhaps, but maybe they're some of those players will see more action over the next couple of weeks before we get to that tie.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think all these midweek league games that we've got coming up, there's going to have to be some rotation, and I think some of those players are going to get some opportunities in those games. And then I think when we come to the game at Anfield, you kind of have a look and see where the land lies in terms of how these games have gone in terms of results and fitness. Because if we've suddenly picked up 2 or 3 injuries, then all of a sudden you're not quite so keen to put a strong side out at Anfield. Although with 4, maybe 5,500 Saints fans travelling up there on a Wednesday night, does Russell Martin feel duty bound to put the first team out and say, yeah, go on then, let's have a crack at it? Because I mean, Liverpool won't put their strongest 11. You wouldn't have thought.
Isn't it just after their cup final?
Cup final, yeah.
Yes,
they're playing
they've got Chelsea on the Sunday. So it's I mean, it's entirely possible that
here we go.
That it's completely changed.
Talking ourselves into hope already.
Who knows? But I think ultimately when you go away to basically the second best team in the country, I don't think that as a side in the division below, I don't think you can get away with making changes. I think you've got to go full strength for that game. I don't see any real justification for playing around with it, other than if we've got 4 or 5 players nursing injury problems.
Yeah, isn't it a massive disservice to the FA Cup though, making this a midweek round? It's the last 16 of the most famous cup competition in the world. Liverpool ain't going to put a full side out because they've got a game on the Sunday or Saturday or whatever, and we're not going to put a full side out because we've got 15 games before then or whatever it is. And it's if they've made it on a Saturday like it has always been for as long as I can remember. I don't know, is this the first year the 5th round's been on a
No, because we
played
played Grimsby, didn't we, last year?
Oh, of course we did.
That was great,
how can I forget that? Yeah, how can I forget that?
It's been fifth round's been midweek for 2 or 3 years now, I think.
It is shit though. You are right, Glenn. It's awful.
It's a dreadful decision to do that, and the replays thing. I can understand why they've gone, but making this a midweek round is absolutely crazy in my book because it just deducts massively from the prestige of the competition.
Well, the good news is we don't have to play Watford again until April. I checked before we came on. So let's just do Player of the Week. If you're watching live on Sunday evening, do let us know your Player of the Week in the comments. I'm just going to go around the screen. Steve, who stood out for you from the 2 games? This could be quite an extensive list this week.
Yeah, I mean, if we're taking both games into account, then I'm going to come up with Sekou Mara. It's been. I mean, I think the first half against Watford, I thought you could see what he was trying to do. It's just that brain and body weren't quite in tandem.
Wasn't quite clicking, was it?
Yeah, he was trying to do things and they just weren't coming off. And actually, like his through ball for Adams was a great little through ball through the gap. Really sort of eye of the needle stuff that someone low on confidence just wouldn't have even tried to play it. So you could see what he was trying to do all evening. It was only really second half that things started to kind of fall for him. And had another impact off the bench yesterday to good effect. So yeah. Very good.
Alfie?
Well, I would have gone for Sekou Mara myself, obviously, but for a differential, I'll just say the obvious choice, which is Joe Rothwell, because he scored what will be the goal of the season, undoubtedly, I would imagine. And also his ball in for Chadham's to the third against Watford was pretty decent as well. So, yeah, over the 2 games, Joe Rothwell. Good
shout. And Glenn, anyone else we can add to that list?
So we've scored 8 goals in 2 weeks, so I'm going to pick a defender, obviously. I thought at times yesterday he was the only guy defending because he was Harvard Bellis didn't have the greatest of games yesterday, and I thought Bednarek got him through it. He just seemed to be the sort of like the tower of strength at the back there, like we always wanted him to be, and he hasn't always been in the past. So I thought he was good. He also had a very good game against Watford. It was his turn to play in that game. I thought he was decent. So I know it probably won't be everyone's choice in a week where we've scored a load of goals, but Jan Bednarek for me.
Fair enough. Right, we'll get that poll on the socials a little bit later tonight. Our fourth game this month is Tuesday's trip to Bristol City. They recorded their first league win of the year at the weekend. They beat Middlesbrough 2-1. Alfie, I'm going to come to you first. Bristol City, I mean, Carl Walker-Peters scored that worldie, which was enough to give us all 3 points back in November. It wasn't a classic. I don't know what I'm expecting from Tuesday, but I suspect it's going to be a similar game.
That feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it? Actually, when you think about it. On that night they had chances. They sort of powered through the defence a couple of times, sort of similar to how Huddersfield did in the away game back in November as well. But they just couldn't score anything. I think Tommy Conway must have missed 2 golden opportunities that night, and he's a good forward, he's a good striker, someone who I tipped to play Premier League at some point. So I think they maybe got away with that a little bit. They've, like I say, the results haven't been unbelievable this month, but I think everybody is now behind the new manager, Liam Manning. Was that his first or one of his first games when he came to St Mary's?
Yeah.
He hadn't lost it. Had they drawn a game? Because he came in from Oxford, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I think they'd drawn on the weekend before.
But I think now, obviously at the time, it was all about Nigel Pearson leaving and sort of some anti-board sentiment. But actually, Liam Manning has got on playing decent football. The only thing he needs to do is just score more goals. I think people may have watched the Leeds game because that was on Sky when we were in Rotherham, I think it was, and they produced absolutely nothing at Ashton Gate there. Leeds won 1-0, and City just didn't look threatening at all. So they'll be trying to improve on that. They'll probably, if depending on Saints team, they might see a way to sort of pound through them. But I'm not expecting 8 goals again. That's for sure. I think Saints might edge it by 1 or 2. But yeah, I think there'll be some tired legs on City because they played the FA Cup replay with Nottingham Forest last week as well. That went to extra time penalties. They drew both games with Forest, and obviously such a good result for them. So yeah, then they're a good team, but they're just that middling area where they're not going to push for the playoffs, and they're nowhere near going down. So it's a team that you have to beat if you want to be in the top 2.
It all sounds very Tuesday night, doesn't it? Glenn, my note said that it was Bazunu that kind of kept us in the game in the first half back in November. It was, not a huge amount to write home about.
I mean, the note I wrote about that game was it's one of those that you'll think back on and just go, a win is a win, because we weren't particularly good, and Bristol City were, they set up with pretty basic tactics, which was 10 behind the ball and try and spring a break, which they managed to do on a few occasions, and Bazunu kept us in it. So I think back then we were still messing with our formation a little bit. I noticed that Charlie Alcaraz played as a sort of false 9 in that, and then he got pushed out to the wing when Adams came on and things like that. So
Shea Charles start that one, did he? I think he might be Charles and Manning, I think, that came back in for that one. But yeah, definitely I remember Alcaraz up front.
Yeah, and also interestingly, bearing in mind the game we've just had, it was another game where I think Russell Martin made a couple of subs in the second half, and he brought Smallbone and Aribo on together. So it's like an engine room with no engine, with both of those playing, because neither of them can run. So so there was a few problems caused then, but again we sort of got away with it and managed to close out a 1-0 win thanks to that very good goal by Carl Walker-Peters. But so I think this is quite a difficult game. I don't think obviously it's as difficult as West Brom coming up on the Friday. I just hope Russell Martin gets the balance right in the midfield, and we give him a decent game. I be interested in Bristol City's attitude, because they might have seen Huddersfield and how they played against us, and maybe think that's the blueprint. Let's go for that. Maybe they don't have the players to play like that. I think we're going to get 1 of 2 performances from teams against us now, in that they're going to, the lower teams, if you like, they're going to absolutely go for it and try and press us all over the park, or they're just going to sit in the 10 at the back and hope for the best. So it'd be interesting to see what tactics Bristol City have got, but we should obviously be too good for them, and with the players we've got to come in either to the starting lineup or to come off the bench, we should have too much for them.
We touched on it a bit earlier, Steve, but what are your thoughts ahead of this one? I think they were on a 6-game winless championship run going into the weekend. Alfie mentioned the FA Cup. They had the win against, it was West Ham, wasn't it, I think? And then obviously that game against Forest, taking them to a replay. It seems like the performances might have been there. Perhaps they're just not getting the results. So it could be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean they've had 3 games against Premier League opposition, and 4 games against Premier League opposition, and not lost any of them. So I mean they're clearly able to raise their game. Whether I don't really know what their ambitions are going to be like for this game. It may be that, I mean, as you say, if maybe they don't have the players to play in the same way that Huddersfield did yesterday. But I mean, if they don't, that's a little bit of a damning indictment that you can't match Huddersfield Town's performance in a championship game. When you've got the resources that, I mean, Bristol City have got far more resource and capability than Huddersfield have. But yeah, it might just be a case that they kind of play similar way to how they did against Leeds, but hoping to kind of be a little bit more clinical when on the rare occasion they do manage to kind of venture forward. Because I mean, they basically had one shot on target on that Friday night, and other than that, barely laid a glove on Leeds, and it was all very easy. I mean, if we can have more of the same, then I mean, I'd bite your arm off for a 1-0 win as comfortable as that was. That's for sure.
You've had a pretty easy run recently, Alfie, I think, with the predictions for your starting 11, because we've been pretty sort of certain on the team and what might happen. This could be the first time on Tuesday night where we see a couple of surprises, maybe, and you might have to think a bit harder for that one on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think Russell said yesterday that there'll be a change or two for sure. So there definitely will be. I think obviously Flynn Downs will come out if he's injured. Hopefully Stewie Armstrong stays in, because if he does, that makes the midfield choice a little bit easier in my opinion. And then the back four is not going to change. It's just the front three. So in my opinion, it will probably be Adams out and David Brooks in, Adam Armstrong through the middle, and then possibly Fraser for a dozy. I think Adam Armstrong will keep his place. So I would predict there'll be maybe 1 or 2, 3 at most changes, and I think there'll be Downs, Che Adams, and maybe Fraser.
Do you think the same, Glenn? Same front three for you?
Pretty much. I think Fraser will stay in, but I agree that David Brooks will start ahead of Adams, and and someone will start instead of Flynn Downs. I hope it's Shea Charles, but it'll probably be Joe Rothwell.
Okay, let's do some score predictions. Again, if you're watching along live, you can stick your score predictions. Needless to say, I don't think anybody predicted that the weekend's game was going to finish 5-3. So we'll kind of gloss over that one. We're all fairly optimistic, though. I think goals scored, we weren't far off. It was just those conceded. Steve, a prediction for Tuesday night, please.
I think a mirror of the home game, and another 1-0 win.
Okay, Alfie.
Yeah, I already alluded to what I think it was going to be in my sort of like prologue. And I'm also going for a 1-0 win, just about edge it.
All right, not many goals then, Glenn. Do you agree? Do you think it's going to be quite a tight affair?
I do, but just to be different, I'll go for 2-0.
2-0, right? Okay, nice one. Thank you. Just before we finish, I want to touch on the Women's FA Cup as well. It was the 5th round match today. Saints women 1, Manchester United 3. When you saw that United lineup, Steve, I mean, that was pretty much their first team. They were taking that quite seriously, weren't they? And it would have been pretty decent if we had got through. But that was a strong side at Eastleigh today. Yeah,
I mean, I think that kind of shows the kind of respect that I think Saints have earned over the last probably 18 months or so since they've been in the Championship, in that they're very capable of giving these big sides a bloody nose on their day. We saw it obviously earlier in the season in the Continental Cup against Arsenal, where Arsenal needed an injury time winner to sneak through that one. And yeah, I mean, you look down that Man United side, and it's. I mean, you got 3, maybe 4 England internationals in that lineup. So you've got Euro winners, World Cup finalists in that lineup, and yeah, we went toe to toe to them. It was, I mean, there were spells where United probably could and should have extended their lead in that first half, but once we kind of got a bit of a foothold in the game, all of a sudden we did rattle them a fair bit and created a few chances. Could have had a penalty on another day, and I mean, I'll be very interested to see the highlights and see the United third goal, because I mean, our players were absolutely adamant it hadn't even gone close to crossing the line. So be very interested to see what actually happened there. But I mean, 3-1, absolutely no disgrace losing to a side of that quality, but it does give an indication to the players of the level that they both aspire to and need to get to if they want to be challengers at the highest level. Which, I mean, let's be honest, the club very clearly does. The amount it's invested into the women's game in the last 3 or 4 years, that's the goal. But yeah, I mean, it was a good occasion. 4,500 at the Silver Lake. I'm still, as I said last week, I still think the club erred by putting the game there rather than at St Mary's. But it is what it is. It was a close, sort of tight atmosphere, I would imagine, rather than the sort of vast sort of sways of seats you'd have at St Mary's. But I kind of would have been nice, I think, to have got another sort of 15,000 in for a game at St Mary's again.
You do learn a lot from the team, about the team, Glenn, when you play opposition like Manchester United. And instead we had Arsenal earlier in the league. So they can see what the gap is and what work needs to be done with the run-in for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they aspire to be a WSL team, and they've given 2 WSL teams a decent game this season. I think Arsenal rested a few players. But but Saints put up a very good show in that game, and against a stronger Manchester United side, they put up a decent show again today. I heard an interview with Laura Rafferty before the game where she basically said this was all about sort of like testing the levels really, and trying to get a handle on sort of like how close they were to these sort of teams, But it's, I mean, it's a world of difference though playing these in a one-off game than it is, playing one week after week after week in the WSL. So Saints have got to sort their got to sort their league form out and become more consistent in the Championship, starting with the game they've got against Birmingham next week, which is a huge game. Win that and the possibilities are there again. But a negative result there, like they got last time out of the league, and it will look a bit distant probably.
Okay. That's pretty much it for this week. Thanks again to Pitter Self-Drive for sponsoring the episode. Don't forget they offer cars, vans, trucks and minibuses for flexible short-term or long-term rentals with a 24-hour drop-off service. They're also offering TSB listeners 10% off the rental with the code Total Saints. That's all one word. You can use that code when you're booking online or quote the code when you're booking over the phone. You can find out more or get in touch by heading to the website, which is bitterselfdrive.co.uk, or give them a call on 02380 474 443. Don't forget, you can also follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. You'll find us if you search for @TotalSaintsPod. We do enjoy hearing from you throughout the week. You can drop us a DM on any of the socials, or you can email us via the website. And we hit 250,000 views on YouTube this week. So thanks if you subscribed to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to check out the new merch store too. That's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. Now, as I mentioned at the start, we're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. Each of the tiers comes with different perks, including some weekly shout outs for the patrons in the Francis Benali and the Mick Shannon tier. So thanks to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe and Mike E, who are all in our Francis Benali tier. And also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall and Mark Littlewood, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will see you for a very special midweek edition of the podcast, which is going to be on Thursday. We're going to review the Bristol City game, and we'll also have a look ahead to West Brom on Friday. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.